everyone. Welcome back to the Hey Sue podcast, where lately I've been talking to CEOs, heads of sales, and other leaders about how they're growing their companies, whether that's a solopreneur endeavor or a large tech company. And all of that is in keeping with the launch of my book, Never Ask for the Sale, which is available at anywhere you get your books. So Never Ask for the Sale, supercharge your business with the power of passionate ambivalence. A lot of what we'll be talking about in every one of these podcasts is my choice of these leaders as people who I think share some of the philosophies of passionate ambivalence and other elements of authentic or conscious selling that I've articulated in this book. Remember, you can get the Hey Sue podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You also, if you want, can see the actual people behind the words that you're hearing right now if you go over to the Sue Heilbronner channel on YouTube and watch this as a video. Today, I am delighted to welcome Amit Shah. He is the Chief Operating Officer for a company called Virta Health, and Virta is addressing one of the most serious medical health issues of our time. Amit will share all about that with you. And really, the reason I wanted to bring him on is I think he is just an incredible example of someone who knows how to build followership for himself, for his mission, for what he cares most about. And I see that in so much of what he does. So we're going to bring in Amit and looking forward to a great conversation. I think you'll love it. Hello, Amit. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Sue.
Thanks for doing this experiment with me. Thanks for joining me for this call.
You know, I'm grateful you asked. I love experimenting.
Yeah, great. Okay. So Amit, I know you as you're the COO of Virta Health, right?
Yep.
And for our listeners, can you share a little bit about what Virta Health does?
Sure. Virta is the first and largest company to reverse obesity and type 2 diabetes. We really cured the disease nutritionally. Today, we like to say we deliver Ozempic-like or GLP-1-like results without the drug. And so we put people on a personalized nutritional plan to help them improve their health and sustain that improvement over time. And so we really we're basically a medical clinic in your pocket, a metabolic health medical clinic in your pocket, and we deliver all of our care virtually via app.
Great. That was an excellent summary. Thank you. The reason that I know you, well, there are a couple of reasons. We have some people in common that are important to both of us. And also, because of that connection, I came to meet you after I went and got my A1C tested, and it was 5.7. I was like, what the heck? I do not have an issue with obesity, but I have some other health issues. And so I was really excited to encounter Virta. And when I asked your wife about you and your company, she said, oh, well, you should just talk to him. And I thought, come on, seriously, he cannot be just talking to random people. I'm not that random, but I'm still random. He can't be doing that. And yet you did it, and you did it with so much passion. So can you tell me how you think about building energy around Virta in the way you do it?
I am very passionate about what we do. And what we do is we actually help people live longer, healthier, better lives. And we start every Monday. We have an all company, all hands every Monday. And I've been at Virta now for 9 years. And this is literally every single Monday that I've been at Virta. So, 9 times 50 is 450 Mondays at least. We start our all hands with a member talking about their Virta experience. And I would say the vast majority, greater than 95% of those times, if not 100%, the member is talking about how they have improved their life. And that is the fuel, the fire, and the energy for me. For me, that is what I want. That is what I want to be doing in the world. And so that's why I have so much energy around it. And I really believe that there is at least some aspect of what we do that can be applied to everyone. As I said in our intro, we are a nutrition program. We're a food program. We believe that our belief is that what has gotten into the metabolic health crisis and epidemic that we have today is not well, I shouldn't say is what it's not. It is food. It's the way that it's what we eat and what we have
Yeah.
eaten over the last 20 to 40 years
Yeah.
that's driving this epidemic. We also therefore believe that food can be our first line of defense, our medicine to get out of this epidemic. And if you think about food, and if you think about food as medicine, you're making a medical decision, a decision on medicine 3 to 5 times a day if you're a human, right? Like anytime you put something in your mouth. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it. And the other thing I'll share is, look, I lost 20 pounds. I joined Virta. Bijal, my wife, and I joke about this all the time. I joined Virta right after we got married. Right before we got married, we decided, as you said, you didn't have an obesity problem. We didn't have an obesity problem. I had some more pounds on me. Right before we got married, we both decided we wanted to lose a little bit of weight for the wedding. I mean, who doesn't decide that? And we went on this shake diet. I forget what it was called. It was one of the ones that, someone had recommended it, a friend of a friend was like, "Oh yeah, I did it. It worked." And we were supposed to do it for like 2 weeks. We did it for 3 days. And on the third day, I was like, honey, we cannot do this anymore. We are angry we were hangry all the time, whatever. And so and by the way, our wedding photos were wonderful. It's not, we didn't have a lot of weight to lose and so everything was fine. And then I joined Virta right afterwards and I dropped 20 pounds. I decided to do Virta only because I was like, I really care about the member experience. I want to experience,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it for 30 days. I did it for 30 days and I felt so good that I've been now doing it for 9 years. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it. And so if anybody has a question, like literally I'll talk to anybody about it. The hard part I've learned over 9 years is that like what you eat is almost as personal as like politics and religion. And so you got to be kind of careful if people don't want to talk about it that much. But if you're open to talk about it, then I'm definitely going to meet you there.
But how does that scale? There's you talk to me for 20 minutes and I have this weird random that's the other thing. I happen to have polycystic kidney disease, which I'm happy I share about liberally because I want to talk as much as I can about voluntary kidney donation. And you then, after we talked, I think went back to your team to validate whether or not my kidney function was good enough to be on Virta, which it wasn't. But you
Hmm.
did all that extra work, and I'm just one person.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say, Sue, not everyone who enrolls in Virta gets introduced through me. And
Okay,
so,
that's good to
lucky
know.
for us, we've served hundreds of thousands of people across the
Yeah.
country in all 50 states, and so we have a commercial process, and
Yes.
people are introduced in that way and all. And I will just say it's the ethos of our approach of our culture where there are a couple of things I'm going to talk about specific Virta values that come into play in the way you're describing our interaction. One is that we put people first, and that's true on our health coaching team. That's true on our product development team. That's true on our commercial team. We are here to reverse obesity and diabetes in 1 billion people. And therefore, we put people first. And so you came to me with a question on how it works. And so I was going to put you first and figure out the answer to your question as best as I can, the answer to those questions.
Yeah.
That's what I expect our health coaches are doing every single day with the hundreds of patients that they're talking to. Our doctors are doing with the thousands of patients they're working with. I mean, it's what we expect. The second Virtan value that we have is being evidence-based. And so one of the things for me to sit here and talk about reversing obesity or reversing diabetes, I mean, a decade ago, people did not believe that that was possible. I didn't believe it. I worked in healthcare prior to Virta. When I first heard that Virta reversed diabetes and obesity, I thought it was kind of crazy. I was like, I don't know if you could do that. I worked in primary care where we just wanted to get people on the meds.
Right,
Virtus getting
right.
people off the meds and healthy. Crazy. And so we published a lot of papers around this process, around this science. And because we're evidence-based, when you had a question about how the science would work for a specific condition,
Yeah.
if we have data on it, we're gonna share it.
Yeah. That's great.
Anyway, that's kind of like, that's kind of how we approach it. And then I think one thing I'll say that I don't think is unique to me, but is just true, is I really like people. I'm kind of a people person.
Yeah.
And as part of that, and this could show up in negative ways as a leader, but it's generally positive, I also want to make people happy. And so like, yeah, you had a question, and like it wasn't a lot of work for me to go and do another round. So
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking that one of the elements that's in Never Ask for the Sale is this element of kind of walking around town marketing, which we did not meet walking around town, but we met on Zoom. And the notion is, if there is something about which you're passionate and you give, and Brad Feld, the VC, just released his book Give First, and what you did is a great example of that. It's sort of doing something you have no idea, you're not supposed to have any idea whether it'll return any return on investment to you at all. And here we are, right? Like if we hadn't had that 15-minute phone conversation, we wouldn't be on this podcast. So I think that is just actually a really good example of whether whether anything comes back or not, putting enough things out into the atmosphere, especially when they're so laden with passion and commitment, that people find it irresistible. I find it irresistible, that kind of energy.
well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I will say now over the long term, I've noticed that too. And not in terms of, just this podcast and all. But yeah, those conversations, the moments, the giving that happens over time, it does accumulate to, and maybe this is selfish, but it also just makes me happy, right? Like there,
Yeah.
even if this podcast hadn't come about, we got an opportunity to connect, and you learned a little bit about Virta and what we do, and me, and that was actually enough of a gift to me. So
That's a great mindset. Um, when I asked you to do this podcast, I told you the context was around people who have a way of selling without selling, who have a way of exhibiting their passion and using that as a lever for growth.
Mhm.
And one of the things you said was, well, I'm not directly in sales, but I think one thing I am strong in is this idea of building followership. Can you
Mhm.
tell me what you mean by followership?
I think in the simplest sense for me, it's been and look, it's this Venn diagram of starting with what you already started with, doing something I love, and getting more people to join our mission, our team, and put their life's work into what we do, into making it come true. And that to me is followership. I am chief operating officer here at Virta. I lead our technology and our operations teams, which is hundreds of people, 600 people. And look, I don't think any leader at that scale, and again, they're much larger scales. You could be leading thousands of people. I actually I know one thing for a fact, which is the followership across that group is not the same. But for the people that I get to interact with, and for the people that we have on the team that are excited about what we do and all. I think a lot of that does come from the top. And as COO, there's a CEO, Sami, our CEO. I think both of us, in very different ways, by the way, he's an introvert and shows up very differently than I do, but are able to exude that passion in a way where people can grab onto it, and people can feel it. Some of it is literally just like the way we live life. I mean, as I shared, I started doing Virta as an experiment for 30 days, and I've been doing it for 9 years. So some of it is just that, just like, hey, wow, this guy's so into it that he does it, you know?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is also, again, those values that we just spoke about. Putting people first, spending the extra time with you. You can imagine you're not the only person that I interact that way with. I try to do
Yeah.
that with people generally,
Yeah.
teammates, and they see that, therefore they do that. And that is a version of followership that I'm excited about. I start every morning reading member feedback. Monday mornings I read NPS feedback, Tuesday mornings health coach satisfaction feedback, etc. And I take snippets of that. That does two things for me. One is I get a very qualitative understanding of how our program is working, and both what works really well and also what doesn't. Um, and both of those are fuel for me. And the second thing is I take the things that are working really well and try to thank specific people about them working well.
Yeah.
Hey, you connected with this patient really well. That's great. And I think that creates this sense of, yeah, that's what's important. At the end of the day, the magic at Virta is we are taking decades of incredibly complex science and boiling it down to a set of decisions that you're making on a daily basis to improve your health and trying to intervene in that moment and get you to make the best decision. And so when we see that magic happen, we got to recognize it.
Yeah. When you get, I love that you do that every day, obviously on Mondays as well, but, and you talked about what happens when positive feedback comes in. From your seat as a COO, how do you process negative feedback coming through from patients? And how do you aggregate it? And how do you decide when to go freak out the folks on the product team and when not to, and when to intervene?
Oh man. The people on these teams will have a different answer, but because it's not in this podcast, I can tell you what my intent is. I our process, the process that we have around this is probably not so dissimilar from other places. But first of all, I try never to take individual patient feedback. I try to use it in the positive to show when things are going well, because I think that is to me, that's the North Star of it's going well. A patient felt the magic. It's going well. I try not to use it in the negative in the same way. Like a patient had a bad experience. Then I think we need to break that down into, is this a systematic bad experience? Is this again, we are asking people to make a change in their life, in their lifestyle. Um, and that could be a non-systematic issue, right? An individual person could be like, well, I just don't want to eat that way. And there's no amount of work that we can do with that person, or there's a different amount of work that we need to do with that person to get them there.
Yeah.
That to me is like asystematic, and that we do have to rely on the coach and clinician relationship to do over time. And so in a situation like that, I might actually just say, hey, just as a flag to you, this specific patient, they're not particularly happy, and like, if there's a different approach we want to take, but your decision on that. Other than that, I'm trying to find the systematic issues. And generally, because our product team does a really good job of saying this is a problem space, a user problem safe space that we're trying to solve. Honestly, when I read our feedback every morning, and again, I'm reading different, it's like a prism, and product feedback, NPS feedback, coach feedback, provider feedback, but when I'm reading that feedback, I would say a good 60 to 70% of the time, if not even up to 80% of the time, in seeing the not positive or opportunistic, or the feedback that is an opportunity for us to improve, I'm able to pretty quickly categorize it and, this is a problem space I've heard of. And the team is either working on it or has deprioritized working on it. I would say there are a handful of times where I'll say, look, this seems new, emergent, and important. And then that's when I'll engage the team and say, look, like, here's a patient quote, but more then I also am pretty analytical in my approach. And so then I'll try to go through our system and say, do we see more like this? How would this show up in the metrics that we have? Over a period of time, it has caused us to maybe shift the metric that we're looking at too. Like, hey, we're not looking at the right thing. I'm seeing this more and more qualitatively. What's the quantitative result? That helps us size the problem. That helps us then go prioritize and figure out if we need to fix it. So yeah, I think the approach that I try to take is generally to say, A, is this systematic or not? And if it's not systematic, do I need to flag it to the human, to the provider, to the clinician, et cetera? And B, if it's systematic, is it something that's known and a problem space that we're aware of? And if so, then I don't really need to jostle the team. And then if I see it enough, then I should jostle the team and like, let me get the right data set to make sure that I'm not causing a lot of whiplash.
Got it. That's really helpful. That I see that in so many companies, that issue arise. So I like how you wouldn't be able to read that feedback every day if you didn't have an approach that was fairly systematic. It wouldn't be that productive. So, or at least there would be downsides. On a different note, I know you don't oversee sales, but you've been there a long time. And through a number of chapters on this issue, like this issue, I feel has grown in popular. Where I mean, I don't even know if I knew what the A1C test was 5 years ago. I'm not sure I did.
Yeah.
How long has that test existed? Do you know?
I actually don't know how long hemoglobin A1C testing has existed. I will say at least for the last kind of 4 decades, the definition of diabetes has been around elevated glucose levels, which the test for that has been your hemoglobin A1C in
Okay,
general.
so
So
I've just
it's
been
been
out of
around.
it.
Yeah.
I've been out of it or have not had an issue with it. But it just feels like right now is the moment for your company. And from your seat, what do you see as the reason? And there's been tons of competition. And my story, I don't know if there's direct competition for you all, but there's indirect everything. I mean, including, Peter Attia's books. And there's just a lot of discussion in the market about this topic. Why has Virta been successful from a growth perspective other than the product? Other than the product.
Yes. I know you said other than the product, but I will say one thing about the product, because I think it's important when I say the other things about why I believe we've been successful. Um, it works. It works. And that I think is important to underscore when you look at medical costs have only been going up for the last 4 decades.
Yeah.
Obesity and type 2 diabetes rates have only been going up for the last 4 decades. The percentage of people that are taking medication for those problems has only been going up for the last 4 decades. So when you have a solution that can get people healthy while taking them off the drugs or without putting them on the drugs in the first place, and can therefore save money, that is unique,
Yeah, it's virtuous.
incredibly distinctive. And so I don't want to just throw away, like, forget the product. I mean, because it works, that's actually the only reason we've been around for 10 years.
Yeah.
Would have been blasted out of here as like, hey, you can't reverse it and it doesn't work. But because it works, because we have literally patients that, I tell you, I read it every morning. It saved their life. The Virta saved my life. Virta transformed my life. Virta has improved my life is at least 30 to 50% of the comments I read on any given morning. At least.
Okay.
And
So
so,
if that, okay,
wait,
sorry.
but let me tell you why it worked other ways. So is it?
All right, then I want to come back to the
Okay.
product for a second. Okay.
So that's the problem. Other than that, I would say I have a tremendous amount of respect for and an admiration, candidly, for our commercial team who goes out there, and especially our commercial team of like 7 or 8 years ago when we first started to commercialize. Because again, the first couple of years we were just doing clinical trial, then we had data, and so they went out there, and the view at the time was literally the ADA, American Diabetes Association, would talk about diabetes as a chronic and irreversible condition. And we coined the term reversal. So we had commercial people going out there trying to convince buyers that what the ADA was saying was actually not true. You could reverse it. And look, good on the ADA. In 2021, they referenced our 5-year clinical trial and said, hey, actually, it is a reversible disease and nutrition could be a first-line defense. But anyway, our commercial team went out there. What you said about this being a moment for us, you're absolutely right. But that's because I joke it's like, 10 years to an overnight success. We've been pounding the pavement and talking about food and nutrition as being medicine and the disease being reversible. We've published almost 20 peer-reviewed papers. We've been in the American Diabetes Association scientific sessions every year for the last decade. It's after all of that that the momentum is building. And honestly, initiatives like, Make America Healthy Again, which again, there's a lot of baggage there, but it has shined a spotlight on food can be medicine and it doesn't have to be pharma. And it's things like that. It's that plus the advent of GLP-1s have been around. GLP-1s are Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Wegovy. That drug class has been around since the early 2000s, 2005. They were diabetes drugs. The big difference in 2023, 2024 is they became indicated for obesity. And diabetes is a problem that impacts 10% of the population. Obesity is a problem that impacts 60% of the population. Because of that, but it's the same drug. And you know what? Virta's been around since 2015, so we've been deprescribing and prescribing that drug for a decade. So we happen to have a decade's worth of data on how to utilize this drug best and how to get people off of it and keep them healthy.
Huh.
It's those tailwinds that have come together that have driven this moment. And by the way, our commercial team still has an incredibly hard job of going out there and because buyers are not convinced that it works because everything they've bought before this has not worked. And so they go out there and they show data, piece of data after piece of data and help buyers see that, hey, this is a fundamentally different approach and it works. And this is the moment for you to do it. Because if you don't, then you're going to have this escalating set of GLP-1 costs for a huge part of your population
Right.
that you just cannot manage.
And just out of curiosity, I said I wanted to go back to the product for a moment. The story in my mind is most things that come into the umbrella of dieting or food, food recommendation systems ultimately fail the user
Yeah.
because they're impossible to stick to, sort of your milkshake diet before your wedding.
Yeah.
This works because how is it different than those? Is it just doable? Is that one of the key ways it's different?
Yeah, I would say there are a couple of things that make it different. Uh, Number one is the underlying science. The underlying science of diet programs is eat less, exercise more. It's caloric restriction, which drives hunger. I mean, your body gets hungry if you're not fueling it. And if you're not satiated, it's tough to be sustainable. And so that is not Virta. Our underlying science is to eat to satiety,
Yeah.
which then enables people to not feel hungry all the time and makes it highly sustainable. The thing that's interesting is, again, I'll go back to what you eat is what we're actually trying to
Yeah.
solve. And so we shift your intake to be lower carb, moderate protein, high fat. Fat, by the way, is incredibly filling and fulfilling.
Yeah.
I joke with Beetle all the time. I joke with my wife all the time. Like I used to be like a carboholic. I'm a vegetarian, and and I just used to eat a lot of carbs, and that because that's what was most readily available. I'd often go to work dinners and be at a steakhouse, and so I'm going to eat bread rolls and potatoes. That's like generally what is available at a steakhouse for a vegetarian,
Yeah.
and the chocolate cake at the end of the dinner. And so, and by the way, I would do that and think I was relatively healthy for the evening too, because it's like, potatoes and not the worst thing in the world. And I think shifting what you eat to be more filling, like fat, is a lot better. The second thing that makes it so number one is that shift in what you eat that that makes you eat to satiety, which is sustainable. That's the science piece. That works, by the way, because we switch your body to burning fat as its primary fuel source.
Yep.
So when you eat dietary fat, you're burning it, you're not storing it. Again, you could store it adipose or you could store it in your arteries. Both of those are bad, but because you're burning it, it's fine.
Yeah.
And the second reason it works is that we're highly personalized. Again, that is the system that we've built on technology. We are getting biomarkers from individuals, their blood glucose, ketones, weight, blood pressure, if applicable. We use all of that information, plus the conversations they're having with their coach and clinician, plus the medications they're on, et cetera, to really personalize what that individual patient needs, what Sue needs in that moment. And because it's personalized, what like the carb intake that I have is different than yours, is different than someone else's. But because we can personalize it, it makes it that much more sustainable. And then the third is what I would call the long tail of issues. I mean, it is definitely a lifestyle. It is definitely, there's some behavioral changes that work in our favor, which is once people start to see it work, the
Right.
motivation to have it, to continue it gets stronger and stronger because of how people feel. I'll go back to my experience. I wasn't looking to lose weight. I just felt so good. Reduced brain fog. I mean, there's a lot of science, and we've published papers on reduced depression, improved sleep, improved liver function, improved kidney function. Like I can go on and on about how your body naturally heals itself when you start to eat this way. People feel that. They're able to do more things. By the way, our average weight loss at 1 year is almost 10% of body weight. When you lose that kind of weight, you actually start to move more. So
Yep.
people are always like, well, it's diet and exercise. I'm like, actually, the only thing we focus on is helping you eat right.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
call
that
it
makes
diet because
sense.
I think But once you lose 10% of your body weight, you know what you're doing a lot more of? Walking. We have so many. I mean, I think of our patient Mike from Alabama, Michael from Alabama, who lost 150 pounds and ran his first 5K. He didn't want to run. We didn't start on day one being like, I'm going to go run a 5K. We weren't like, yeah, get out there and run. And he couldn't run, you know? But after he lost 150 pounds, he ran a 5K.
That's great. All right. That is really, I kept thinking virtuous cycle, and the company's name is Virta. So there you go. I want to just finish with one of the favorite things that I know about you, which is that you have, apparently, because of a video someone posted on LinkedIn, secret handshakes with a number of people at your company, and they're incredibly complex. Was that your idea?
Actually, I want to be clear. They aren't meant to be secret. They are meant to be handshakes. I got this from, well, I mean, I don't know where I got it from exactly, but LeBron James. If you watch LeBron James, when he walks out onto the court, he's got all his teammates lined up. He does like a handshake with every single one of them that's different. And I just thought that was so cool. I was like, oh, like you have a thing with every one of your teammates. And so I had an open invitation. I kind of have a dream of like walking into like our quarterly team meeting and just like, handshaking everyone and just being, having my individual handshake with everyone.
Yeah.
The remote world has made this a lot harder because I will come up with a handshake with someone, but then I won't see them for 6 months. So then I'll have to like remember what it is. But to your question on followership and all, I think, look, I really view the people I work with at Virta as like, we are one team. Like we are trying to do this thing in the world together. And, there are a lot of ways you can show a sense of team. And one really small way is that like, we have handshakes with each other. So.
Yeah, it was pretty great. If you want to follow Amit Shah, you'll see this video. It's really well worth seeing on LinkedIn. And just remind me, Amit, what's the, we'll put it in the show notes, but what's the domain name for Virta Health?
VirtaHealth.com.
Very good. VIRTA health.com. And thank you so much, Amit, for joining us. I'm going to share a few notes here with the audience, and then we'll say goodbye. Folks, thanks for tuning in again to another episode of the Hey Sue podcast. We are stretching. We're going to all different sizes of business, scales of business, and this was a great one today for a whole host of reasons, including great thoughts on followership and really just seeing somebody with such a deep passion. And I don't know about you, but I looked up Virta Health as soon as I heard Amit say anything about this company, and I imagine all of you listening have done the same while you've been listening. Thanks for joining us. If you want to pre-order or order, never ask for the sale, just visit heysue.com/book, and we'll see you next time.